So how in the world did a small soccer tournament, one that started with a bunch of teams taking a 3-week boat ride across the Atlantic, become the single most watched event in human history? Seriously, how did that happen? Well, this is that story. This is the story of the FIFA World Cup, told through its most unforgettable moments and its absolute legends.
You know, it's a simple idea, but it's so true. For 1 month, it feels like all the politics, all the borders, all the stuff that separates us, it just kind of fades away. You have billions of people all tuned in, totally united by the passion and the drama of this one competition. It's incredible.
But this massive global party didn't just pop up overnight, not even close. We've got to rewind all the way to the beginning, to an era that was all about a huge dream and, let's be honest, some pretty immense challenges in a world that was changing fast.
Okay, so this guy, Jules Rimet, his dream finally happens in 1930. But it was a really tough sell. I mean, trying to convince European teams to get on a boat for weeks to go to Uruguay? Yeah, that was hard. Italy ended up dominating the 30s, winning 2 in a row, and then World War II brought everything to a screeching halt. And get this, the only reason the trophy survived is because a FIFA official literally hid it in a shoebox under his bed for the entire war. Wild.
So when the tournament finally came back in 1950, Brazil was ready to throw a party. They built this gigantic stadium, the Maracanazo, and in the final match, they just needed a draw against Uruguay to win it all. And they're playing in front of almost 200,000 of their own fans. But they lost. The shock was so deep, it was given its own name, the Maracanazo. It was a true national tragedy, so much so that Brazil completely abandoned their white team jerseys forever.
After the war, something new came along: television. And with TV, the World Cup started creating its first real global icons. This is the period when superstars were born, and their moves were suddenly being broadcast into living rooms all across the planet.
Just try to imagine this. You're a 17-year-old kid. Nobody really knows who you are. And you step onto the world stage in Sweden and just take over. That was Pelé in 1958. He scored 6 goals, 2 of them in the final, and delivered Brazil its very first World Cup. Just like that, a legend was born. All right, let's jump forward to 1966. England is playing at home, at Wembley, in the final against West Germany. Geoff Hurst smacks the shot, it hammers the crossbar, bounces down, but did it actually cross the line? The referee said yes. England won its one and only World Cup, and to this day, it is still one of the most furiously debated goals in football history.
And then came 1970. For the very first time, the whole world could see those vibrant yellow Brazil jerseys in glorious color. And man, what a sight that was. Led by Pelé, who grabbed his record 3rd title, that 1970 team played a style of football so artistic, so fluid, it got a nickname, the Beautiful Game. A lot of people still say they're the greatest team of all time.
Moving into the 70s and 80s, you could feel a shift. Of course, teams still mattered, but this era was really defined by these individual geniuses, these gods of the game who could practically bend a whole tournament to their will. All that happening right alongside some incredible new tactics.
Case in point, 1974. The Netherlands, led by the incredible Johan Cruyff, showed the world something new called total football. It was totally revolutionary. Players weren't stuck in one position anymore. You had defenders flying up the field to attack, attackers dropping back to defend. It was so smart, so fluid, and it took them all the way to the final. It absolutely changed the game forever. But if there's one player who owned this era, it has to be Diego Maradona in 1986. In one single game against England, he gave us the full Maradona experience. First, the outrageous Hand of God goal, a blatant cheat. Then, just a few minutes later, he scores what might be the greatest goal of all time, weaving through half the English team. It was the ultimate controversy and the ultimate brilliance, all in one explosive package, as he basically dragged Argentina to victory all by himself. The era kind of ended on a more cautious note. West Germany ground out a tough defensive win in 1990. Then, in 94, the tournament came to the USA, which was a huge deal for growing the sport globally. And that final, well, it was the first one ever to be goalless, and it ended with that heartbreaking image of Italy's biggest star, Roberto Baggio, missing the final penalty and just handing the trophy to Brazil. Okay, now we're entering the modern World Cup, the one most of us probably grew up with. We're talking bigger tournaments, way more teams from all over the globe, and a whole new generation of stars fighting for that ultimate prize, in a world that's more connected than ever.
The turn of the millennium was just pure, unadulterated drama.
In '98, Zinedine Zidane became a god in France, scoring 2 goals in the final to win it on home soil. Then in 2002, you have the amazing comeback story of Brazil's Ronaldo, who fought back from a brutal injury to score both goals in the final and get Brazil their 5th star. And then, 2006. Zidane's incredible career ends with that infamous headbutt in the final, as Italy goes on to lift the cup. Just unbelievable stuff.
So the next decade was really all about European dominance. Spain and their mesmerizing tiki-taka style passed their way to victory in the first-ever World Cup in Africa in 2010. 4 years later, Germany won their 4th title, but not before absolutely humiliating the hosts Brazil 7-1 in one of the most stunning results in sports history. And then in 2018, a new teenage phenom arrived on the scene, as Kylian Mbappe's lightning speed fired France to their 2nd title.
Which brings us to 2022 in Qatar, and the stage was set for what everybody hoped would be the perfect final. You had the defending champs, France, with their unstoppable superstar Mbappe. And on the other side, Argentina, led by the one and only Lionel Messi, in what he said was going to be his very last World Cup match.
What we got wasn't just perfect. It was maybe the greatest final ever played. It was an absolute roller coaster, just pure chaos, stunning goals, crazy comebacks. It ends 3-3, a true clash of titans that had the entire planet on the absolute edge of their seats. And when Argentina finally won it on penalties, it felt like more than just a win. It was the moment. The moment that Lionel Messi, one of the greatest to ever play the game, finally got his hands on the one trophy that had always escaped him. For so many people, it was the final chapter. It was the completion of his football story.
So, what could possibly be next? Well, the great thing is, the history of the World Cup is always being written. And the next chapter, it's right around the corner.
In 2026, the tournament is getting a massive expansion, up to 48 teams. And it's going to be hosted across 3 countries, the USA, Canada, and Mexico. Think about that. From just 13 teams on a boat in 1930 to 48 teams spread across an entire continent. It just shows you how enormous this thing has become. More countries, more games, more dreams.
So from Pelé's incredible arrival to Maradona's mix of magic and madness, from Zidane's header to Messi's fairy tale ending, every single World Cup creates these memories that just stick with us for a lifetime. When you look back at this whole incredible story, which one was it for you? Which year was your favorite?